Hey everyone, it's Maddie here from the We Came From The Future podcast. This is episode number 2, where we kind of interview people that are doing extraordinary things in the financial, crypto, NFT, finance scene, people that are visionaries pushing the space forward and have a wealth of knowledge to share. So I've got Patrick here from No Nonsense Forex YouTube channel, which is a pretty big channel. Patrick, how are you today? And thanks for joining.
Doing great, Maddie. Yeah, good to be on episode 2. Pretty excited.
Yeah, the podcast is new, but I'm really keen to get people in here that, have done something that is new for the audience. And growing a social media channel is very hard to do. And getting you mentioned you have 11 years worth of experience in this space. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Pat, how did you get started with Forex trading? What's your background? And how did you get started with the channel? So that's a bit of a story and journey.
So I waited tables for a very long time. I did most of that here in Las Vegas. And you'll find in this industry that almost everybody has something going on in their back pocket because they don't want to be in that industry forever. So I ran into somebody who did penny stocks back in 2009, and it was a terrible experience, start to finish. But once that finance bug bites you, it tends to not let go. So you start looking for other avenues. And I found Forex soon after, and I failed at that too a lot. But then I just kept at it and kept trying new things. And once I got good, I got really good. And it just pretty much stayed that way. I turned pro with a professional prop firm in 2014, and I have been with them ever since. And then in early 2018, I started the channel.
Sorry, Pat, I'm going to quickly just jump in. I think because the crazy thing is that the people that listen to my podcast, they're artists, they're NFT people, they're tech people, they're people that don't know anything about anything that's in this space and kind of new to it. So let's quickly define what Forex is, just so that people are on the same page.
Sure. Forex stands for foreign exchange. So what you do is you don't trade an individual currency. You trade one currency against another. And you do what you can to try to support the one that's going to be strong against one that you feel is going to be weak. And if you are correct, for every space it moves up or down on the chart, that money goes into your pocket. And if it goes the opposite way, then it's money that goes out of your pocket. And it is a $5 to $6 trillion a day market. The spot Forex market that we trade is much smaller, but it's the largest market in the world. It's the largest traded market in the world. And it is also the market that probably produces the most scammers. So there are people out there that just think Forex itself is a scam because all they see on social media is 21, 22-year-old kids trying to peddle their Forex product. And that is
sell their courses and their AI bots and stuff.
And their signals. Yeah, it's all terrible. Learn it yourself, and then decide what you want to do from there. But yeah, and I have a lot of crypto people over on the Forex side now. Like I told you before, once that finance bug bites you, no matter where it bit you, it tends to be there for a long time. So a lot of people getting interested in other markets right now, which is great. Works well for me.
No, it's great. So you got into trading Forex and learning about the markets. And then from there, what was the decision to start a YouTube channel? Because the YouTube channel is buzzing. It's got like 240,000 followers. And the reason why this is so important right now is because on the weekend, and I'm not sure if this was on your radar, Pat, but we just had a monster kind of NFT art drop. And there was an artist called Beeple that came in and sold $3.5 million worth of art NFTs. So
I saw that. I saw you talking to Alex about that too.
insane.
So yeah, the impetus for the channel was a couple things. One, I had something that the world just hadn't seen before. I completely reinvented the way people use technical analysis. For some reason, everybody across every market, and this includes crypto, are using tools like dinosaurs, and they're using tools that were created for the stock market 40, 50 years ago. And they're totally fine with it when there are so many other modern day options out there, and it's just nobody's aware of them. So I've been using them for a long time, and I learned how to put them together. And I also added elements like, trade management and trading psychology, which really gets ignored on most channels because they're just not as appealing. But when you put it all together, that's where the magic happens. And that's why the channel grew to be what it was over time. It wouldn't be this big, this fast, if it didn't work really well and had a lot of sustainability to it going forward.
Hmm. So what was your motive from starting the channel? Did you want to grow it to a really large degree, or was it more to just share your what you had in mind? How long has the channel been running for, by the way?
Yeah, I forgot that part. Sorry. So it's been around since February 2018, and
Wow.
the personal selfish reason of putting it out there is I wanted to do more in the forex world, apart from just prop trading and then trading for myself. And I don't really want to do this anymore, but I wanted to get on the radar of hedge funds and family offices and larger investors like
Hmm.
that. And
Hmm.
I figure what perfect calling card than it would be to have a real presence on the second largest search engine in the world. So I was like, well, let's do that and just see if offers start coming in my way. And
Yeah.
uh, and that's what happened. But I just don't have any interest in showing up and working a job anymore.
Mhm.
Um, that's just how it developed over time.
Yeah, I totally get you. And I think, and the reason why this is again so important right now is again tying it to what happened on the weekend was it was the kind of realization to a lot of artists and collectors because the NFT world is kind of new. It's very new actually, and a lot of how to invest and all that sort of stuff is kind of there's not much information out there. There's not much data points to look at or historical charts or whatever you want to see, but it was a kind of realization that people came with 1.7 million followers on Instagram. Obviously, he had a story of his own, and that influence allowed him to do something really big. And a lot of artists, I think, realized then that the social media and having this sort of awareness channels matters a lot. And the extra point of that, and this is a question I was going to ask you, and you answered it, was what was the benefits of having a big YouTube channel? And like you said, it is to get on the radar and kind of being seen as an authority of someone. And the networking opportunity is immense. I can't imagine how many people would have reached out to you to get something going.
There's almost nothing you can't do with a big following. I get offers every single week. Most of them
Yeah.
aren't very good, but some of them are good. And you just got to decide what you want to allocate your time to. But I've met tremendous people through this whole experience. And I'm not selling artwork for millions of dollars or anything like that. But I wrote a book this year that did really well right out of the gate. And that would have never happened if I didn't have a
Hmm.
following already. I might have never gained ground on something like that. So yeah, and people wouldn't have that many followers if he wasn't really good at what he did. So you have to
Hmm.
be actually good at it first,
That's
and
true.
then you get the following, and then you leverage it beyond that.
That's true. That's true. I mean, you can be great at it, right? And then maybe you're good at it, but you don't focus on that social media growth as well. So I think people did the 13 years everyday art piece challenge, but of course he shared on his Instagram really cool art that he was doing, and that's what allowed him to grow. And obviously with yourself, you're sharing your trades, your like strategies, etc., etc. And I'm assuming you're doing it quite regularly. Um, like there's a certain frequency that you focus on growing that social media channel, right?
Yeah, the frequency is a bit less so now. I decided to make an evergreen channel, so excuse me. Instead of saying, "Oh, hey, it's December 16th. Let's see what's going on in the market today." I didn't want to make a channel like that. I want to make concepts that you could watch my channel 15 years into the future, and it would still be as relevant as it is today. Now, the downside of that is you kind of do run out of things to talk about, unless you really want to water down your content, which I don't want to do. Maybe because it's not so much pouring out for YouTube money. It's really kind of leaving a legacy and having something there. So I come out with a video once a month.
Oh,
Everybody's
nice.
yeah,
But
everybody's
just once a month.
once a month. That's it.
Wow.
I tweet about once a week, and like I said, after you've already gotten that audience,
Hmm.
I'm not saying put it on cruise control, but you kind of could. I don't make the money off of YouTube that I did when I was coming out with something twice a week. But it's still good. And when it's evergreen, once somebody finds you,
Hmm.
they want to watch everything you've ever done, if they like you. And,
Hmm.
I have 167 videos on YouTube. So that machine just keeps on going in the background. So you have the luxury of not feeling the pressure to put something out all the time. Once you get to that point, you certainly still can. A lot of people do. I've just chosen not to, and I've chosen to go some different avenues along the way.
So my marketing brain is kind of taking over now. I've done marketing for 7 years. And for me, it started off with doing blogs and doing the whole SEO thing. Do you do any written stuff or is it all just YouTube?
Oh, I definitely have a blog. I have a blog that a lot of the videos connect to. They say, hey, if you want more information, go to the blog.
Hmm.
A lot of people who really want to study and take notes, the blog is where they go for that purpose.
Hmm.
And that's been great too. Um, yeah, everybody should have a website, kind of a mission control central that links out to all their social media, all the projects they're doing. I got a link to my book on there, um, things like that. So yeah, for sure. I don't have every single social media channel. I just have the ones that I felt were relevant. So
Hmm.
YouTube, WordPress, and Twitter,
Hmm.
and Discord. I think that's it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need many, but you need to be really good at like the top ones. And I think just covering YouTube and like Google search would probably be really big, and like a social platform like Twitter or Facebook would be like,
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah. It all depends on what you're doing. I'm not pimping out a lifestyle, so IG wasn't really an option, and
Hmm.
and Facebook doesn't appeal to me at all. So yeah, I think I did it right. Yeah, I think people think immediately they got to spread themselves out to every single platform out there. You're going to drive yourself crazy, and it's a good way to find out what platforms work for you, I guess. But I feel like you can just figure most of that out yourself.
Hmm. Yeah. So let's kind of take a touch on the crypto aspect of things. Has crypto been on your radar recently? And if it has, do you kind of see beyond the kind of investing part? And have you checked out the tech? And what do you feel about the whole space of cryptocurrencies?
I love the space, and I think every finance person out there should be paying attention to it. You can't just act like it doesn't exist or act like it's not going to be relevant. If anything, at the very worst, this is going to be such a large part of our uh, planet's financial history when it's all said and done.
Hmm.
Whether it lasts, 5 more years or another 100 years, it's something you can't just ignore. People want to ignore it because it's new and they don't understand it and they feel like it's outside of their generation. But it's such a mistake. I've been in the space for a couple of years. I finally went full on bullish on Bitcoin right at about 8,900
Hmm.
USD, and I put out a blog
Nice.
about that. And then I just put out another blog a couple weeks ago showing my whole crypto portfolio. So I'm pretty deep into it.
Nice.
Um, yeah, I love the tech behind it. I'm understanding it more and more every day. I'm really heavy into projects like Cardano
Hmm.
and Uniswap,
Hmm.
and yeah, it really fixes so many of the things that have been broken for so long in the financial system, and
So you've checked out the whole lot. So if you've gone into like Uniswap, you've obviously gone beyond just investing and seen like what the tech can do, and it's like benefits, right?
oh, I'm deeper than people think. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
But once you get that deep, it's like a point of no return when, especially something like Uniswap comes up, and then you start to realize, wait a second, this is all just managed by people. There's no like centralized, gatekeeping here. It's all just open for person to use, and they're sharing the profits with everyone that's staking. Like all this stuff starts to make sense in your head, and you're like, wait a second, what is this going to mean for the broader market? And yeah, it's like Uniswap is one product, and there's multiple products that are now coming out built on blockchain. It's just a revolutionary time, really.
It is, and I think part of our animal brains says, okay, this might be a little too good to be true. So we got to be a little cautious along the way. Don't get too pie-eyed over the whole
Hmm.
thing.
Hmm.
This is going to take its bumps and bruises. There's going to be scams. There's going to be a lot of theft. But
Oh yeah.
if you just stick with it, and I mean, we're all still early adopters in this whole thing. That's the crazy part about it is, so many of us have been in this for 3, 4 years, and it's still at the very genesis of its existence. NFTs, especially, even though you had crypto kitties, years ago. Um, this is brand new. So much to the point where there's really barely anybody in this space if you really zoom out and look at it.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's just so micro at the moment. Before we jump to the NFTs, just want to ask you, would you be able to share like what um your spread of what your coins are? Like what you got some Bitcoin, you got some Ethereum, are you in any altcoins or anything? Or like what's your kind of strategy going into this
Yeah,
seemingly
I
peaceful run?
Yeah, I don't go into really any of the sub 100 coins, but right now, off the top of my head, Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Litecoin, Chainlink, what did I just say? Uniswap and Cardano,
Mhm.
CRO because I have the credit card. Um, I hate the cryptocurrency, but I have the credit card. I have the credit card, so I have CRO, BAT, USDC, of course. Um, I'm probably forgetting one, but I think that's what
So
I'm.
it looks
That's
like these are most of the top ones with a ton of liquidity and probably 3 to 5 years old at least.
yeah, and I still see tremendous upside for those.
Hmm.
I don't. I'm not somebody who's scraping for money right now, so I don't need to really go for broke and try to find that lotto pick.
Hmm.
I mean, right now you're looking at things that have a pretty solid chance of going up and going up a lot.
Yeah.
And you can still accomplish that by having these large cap coins that are established with really good people behind them and already have traction. So I don't understand the need to really go outside of that for somebody in my position right now.
Yeah, totally. I understand that as well. I think 2 years ago when the first kind of peak of the bull run happened and then it dipped and it kind of fell off the cliff really. I remember thinking, well, the next time this bull run happens, and this was kind of my strategy at the start of this year, was that why would I take risk on these smaller market cap coins when these top ones, this top 10 or 20 or 30, whatever they are, they're the ones that are going to be covered by mainstream. They already have massive followings. People already invested in them in 2017. Why take a risk when the top ones already have massive upside anyway? So yeah, totally agree with you there.
Yeah, there's a reason why they survived. Um, and there's that whole first to market mentality too. It's
Totally.
even if they are MySpace, and we haven't seen the Facebook yet. MySpace made a ton of money. So you
Yeah.
can too if you're in this space, and then you can. It's so easy just to transition into something else on
Mhm.
a whim. So why not do it?
Yeah. So that was my mentality at the start of the year, and then because I fell into the NFT rabbit hole, and then there's all this really cool projects coming out. I've allocated a portion of my portfolio to these smaller market cap but kind of long-term promising projects just because of what they do. But yeah, definitely like the top 10 or 20. I feel like, and I saw a bit of this before, was when Bitcoin started to get covered on like CNBC or whatever it was. They didn't just cover Bitcoin, they were covering the top four. So at that time, it was Litecoin, Bitcoin, XRP, and Ethereum. And all four of them were plugged onto the screen, and obviously millions of people watching this. And that's what's going to happen. Whether or not they continue to do any development doesn't matter at this stage when it's all just being thrown out there in front of people, right? Um, I'm sure there's a lot more in terms of charting, but I'm just thinking in terms of like news and media, that just made a lot of sense just to grab like the top 10.
I think a lot of people saw it as still, even though they saw it on CNBC, saw it as very speculative
Mhm.
until the big institutions started coming in.
All right.
And now that they're there, I think a lot of people feel like they have a safety net underneath them because a lot of these companies have staked their reputations on them already. So they're not just going to dump. So that makes people feel better. And that's what's going to bring a lot of money in because a lot of people who have money right now, they didn't get there by being speculative.
Mhm.
And now you're asking them to. And that's a big ask. But when these institutions are coming in, now it seems a lot less speculative and more like a real investment in the future of money. And that's a lot more appealing than what you saw, back in 2017.
Yeah, for sure. I think I remember in 2017, my investments, like my portfolio, I'd refresh Blockfolio, and I'd see massive swings, and then some news would come out saying China banned Bitcoin, or there's something that came out, and then my portfolio would dip like massively because, like you said, it didn't really feel safe at all, right? And now the vibe is completely different. Now it feels like it's much more established. Like you said, institutions have all, whether they were there before as well, or maybe just now they're a lot more public with it and kind of coordinating their support. There is like that kind of feeling now that hey, like there's going to be a ripple effect of all these institutions or like big money coming in, and it definitely feels a lot more safer.
Absolutely. That's, I said before, there is an advantage to being first to market,
Mhm.
but there is the old saying that, pioneers get slaughtered and settlers prosper. You don't want to, you don't want to move to a Wild West town when it's still the Wild West. You'll get
Mhm.
shot. You want to wait till it's established and it actually has infrastructure. And, maybe, you didn't make all the money in the world because you were the first person to set up a hardware store and deal with all the nonsense, but you came after, the main stuff was built, and that, you chased all the bad guys away, and now you can actually, take advantage of what's there. And
Hmm.
that's where we are right now.
It's awesome you bring up the Wild West. It's a good way to jump to the NFT industry because that's
Hey,
exactly what it is, right? It's just pioneers now throwing things around, people, projects taking risks and like trying to build something. Some of them running out of funds because the business model isn't working. So let's jump into that. Like, how did you come? How did NFTs first come to your radar and when?
well, so I saw Crypto Kitties back in the day. I was following somebody on Twitter who was into them. And I was like, he won't shut up about these Crypto Kitties. Let's go see what he's talking about. And so I take a look at what they are. And I'm a Gen Xer. All right. So anything, anything that was collectible, when I was younger, is something you could actually hold, and you knew it was real because you were holding it, right? So this concept's a bit lost on us, but I do understand that the generations below it wasn't like that. All the card games went digital eventually, and they understand the value of having digital collectibles. It's just I really, didn't grow up with that. But still, the first first time I see Crypto Kitties, I'm like, this is one of the dumbest things I have ever seen in my entire life. I mean, it's a crude drawing of a cat. It's the same thing as a Tamagotchi pet, and I'm supposed to pay a bunch of money for it. I'm like, no, no, thank you, I'll pass.
Hmm.
And then I see them going up in value like crazy. I'm like, I'm still not interested because I just don't understand why this is what it is. And then that was kind of that first iteration, right? So that comes out of the way. And then this whole other space comes in kind of on the back of that, with the art and the card games and the wearables and things like that. And that starts to make a bit more sense.
Hmm.
Even when you first get in, when I first went to Decentraland and I walked around, I'm like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
But the more I started paying attention to it, if you just stop being so dismissive and you actually, get into it a little bit, then it starts to make a lot more sense. And you're like, okay, I don't know if this is going to pan out, but there is asymmetrical upside here. And anybody who has taken a basic level probabilities and statistics course understands that this is something you should be paying attention to. I described it to my subscribers to where, okay, and when you're trading forex, you have to be a risk management all star. All right,
Hmm.
you have to really watch your downside as much as you possibly can, and that's the only way to get good and accrue money over time. But when you go outside of that, some of these things are going to seem like a gamble, but they're not. It's like, all right, if you and I were flipping coins, and I would put my money down, heads I lost, and tails I won. Okay, that's 50-50 odds. Not a whole lot of fun in that. We'd just be flipping coins all day. If it was 52% chance that it would land on heads and I'd lose my money, 48% chance it would land on tails and I would double my money. That's what you would see at like a typical Vegas casino, for example.
Hmm.
That's the kind of odds you're up against. And I have no interest in doing anything like that. I've lived in Las Vegas for 15 years. I stopped going to casinos 13 years ago because I just thought this is ridiculous. I'm supposed to lose my money. I don't like that.
Hmm.
But if we start playing and heads, I lose everything. But tails, I make 8 times my money back. Well, then I'm going to play that game all the time. And there's going to be a line of professional gamblers and probabilities guys behind me waiting to play that game too. And
Hmm.
that's how I feel about the things that have high leverage to them, like mining stocks and crypto and things like that, to where I understand I can lose my money. I get that. But the upside is way, way too big to ignore. And even in something like NFTs that are so brand new, and I still don't have my head completely wrapped around it, I do see the tremendous upside, especially of getting in early, like right now,
Hmm.
especially with something like Decentraland, which I think I sent you an email on this before. It's almost like, in a gold rush town, the miners usually get there first and then the infrastructure comes later. It's almost like the infrastructure is being built now and the gold miners aren't even there yet. And it's just really strange, but kind of cool at the same time because everybody feels like something's about to happen and it hasn't happened yet. So it's like, wow, it's like a weird opportunity. Like, I can't believe like I'm even there taking part of it. I don't know if you feel the same way or not.
I do. I have felt the same way for 2.5 years of, of being
Right.
on that platform. The funny thing is, for the first year and a half, there was nothing to be able to be done in Decentraland apart from buying and selling land. So there were just people buying and selling these lands, and then people were speculating that, hey, let's get something close to the center that'll have value when people start to get here. And now it's been 8 to 9 months that Decentraland has been public. The first time people entered 9 months ago, there was pretty much barren land. There's not much to do there. Maybe some polygonal trees and stuff. And now there's like fully functioning casinos that run on Matic that you can earn, DG coin or like whatever coin it is, and they have like hundreds of people playing it. And there's stuff that actually starts to make sense now, like conferences that people are holding, games, art galleries, for example. People are um, buying art, and it makes sense now. Like if you are sitting on like a six-figure art portfolio, a digital art portfolio, well, how the hell are you going to display it? Why not buy a land that you have access to and you own and display it there? That way you're signaling that you own the land, you own the art. People that come to your land know that you own the art. You can put your art up on like virtual conferences to display. Maybe a very popular venue has like your art in it and a really like unique art piece. And now suddenly these lands are starting to have a use case and justify certain price points. So like you said, yeah, it is definitely the Wild West, and we're kind of learning as we go that, hey, wait a second, you can do this. That makes sense. And we're in that zone right now, I feel.
Yeah, to me, it seems like we're a little bit further back. I mean, those things do exist, but unless there's like there's an actual scheduled event that gets announced, still nobody really goes to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the end game for Decentraland is really giving people a reason to go there every single day and to spend a good amount of their time there,
Yeah,
which I
yeah.
think we'll
The
I think we'll
stickiness.
get I think we'll get to. I just like for now, there's not a whole lot of reasons to do that unless you're really, really interested in an event, which I'm not complaining about. This still means the structure and the potential is absolutely there, and we are in the early days. But it's good because, like what you and I just spoke about with Bitcoin and crypto, the institutions are kind of already there. There's a lot of big companies that have already decided, hey, this is something we want to put our money down on, and let's get in now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still land out there for the rest of us.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are some institutions that have bought land in Decentraland, and even other virtual projects like DCG own like a ton of land. I think they're like the second largest landowner in Decentraland. And I think their play is to kind of either lease that land out or maybe onboard their partners and companies and have some sort of a virtual presence thing. Anyway, everyone's got their own ideas. But yeah, totally agree with you that everyone feels like they're going to do that these virtual worlds are going to be something, but they're obviously not the stickiness isn't there. The reason to go back isn't there yet. And I think that's got to do a lot with you want to go in there and actually talk to people and meet people, right? So once those clusters start to be there for longer periods of time, then it's going to start to make sense. But yeah, agree with you.
For sure. And I think with a lot of NFTs and Decentraland altogether, it's going to come down to some of the influencers that are out there right now, um, giving exclusive access to them through Decentraland, which can easily be done.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really exciting for a lot of people, to where it seems like they were so far away from being able to like reach out and touch these celebrities to where, at least in a virtual sense, now you kind of can, and you can have exclusive concerts and exclusive events and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And it's just a matter of getting them on board. And you can't really do that now the way it's built. It's got to be built up a little more. Um,
Definitely.
but but once it has, that's when you can really start throttling up and getting these people on board. And that's really all it takes, because the millennials all the way and the generations younger, they all get it already. You know, it's not a hard sell for them. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
hard transition for them. You know, setting up MetaMask is easy.
Yeah.
Um, you just get them on board and there they are.
Yeah, pretty much. I remember when the art space blew up and suddenly we had like hundreds of new artists to the space. Set up MetaMask, got themselves some Ethereum on Coinbase, transferred it to the MetaMask account, started minting art, and I was like, wow, I thought MetaMask was going to be a hurdle for a very long time for this space, and suddenly people are figuring out. So it is a hurdle, but like if you really want to get to the destination, you will cross those hurdles. Um, One of those things.
For sure. Like I'm having trouble buying land right now. You and I can talk after the podcast, and it has to do with MetaMask, and it has the fact to do with that I'm just not as connected to this as I should be. But I think it's one small little hurdle. But for most people, they're going to get it right away. And I think there's so much opportunity in the art space
Oh my
because
God. Yeah.
I mean, look at it. As far as standard art goes, how many modern artists who are alive right now have most people even heard of? Banksy, who has to
Mhm.
do everything incognito. I mean, I can't name one other alive artist. Um, it's not that people wouldn't be interested. It's just that they're all, all the great ones, as far as people know, are dead, and nobody can afford their art.
Mhm.
Introducing things like this, and already having some big hitters in the game like Beeple and a few Oshus and things like that, you know, that's big. Because people with an eye for art and people appreciating that didn't go away. It just seems so out of reach. Um, I
Yeah.
think, for what it's worth, Maddie, that one of the next big moves I think that can happen is what's going on right now in the fine art world is fractional ownership.
Uh-huh.
I think people love what people's doing. They're just like, well, screw it. I don't have $700,000 lying around, so I'm never going to be able to afford anything he does. But right now, you can own like 1/50th of a Picasso. I couldn't buy a Picasso, but I could afford 1/50th of it. And that could be really interesting to me to, one, say that I own a Picasso technically, two, a place I can park my money. And that's kind of where the fine art market is changing the game. I think the digital art market could step into that world right now. And if you can get people that, just have a moderate amount of money to be able to invest in these bigger players,
Mhm.
that's really intriguing. So maybe hopefully that will come around. But I think that's one of the things that could really boost this market, is to where even the biggest players in the game aren't so far out of reach like you see in the fine art world.
Yeah. I am very excited you brought this up because I have equity in in a project called Niftex. Have you seen Niftex before?
No.
So Niftex does exactly that. It fractionalizes assets that are currently relatively expensive. And so Mystic Axes or even Decentraland land, certain art pieces that are kind of out of reach, what it does and what you can do is you can lock up your token and release fractions in the form of ERC20 tokens, and then suddenly people can start to buy and sell those tokens. So they're kind of making like an exchange for locked NFT goods, and anyone can go there and run some sort of like a pre-sale for their tokens. It sells out, and then it has its own market that you can trade freely on. And they're doing pretty good. They've already got like you know 30 to 40 big assets that have been fractionalized. They do it on the Axie community, uses them pretty often. I'm personally waiting for like some really big $1 million assets in the NFT world, and enough people understanding and appreciating digital ownership of NFT assets, that this Niftex kind of sort of marketplace makes sense and appeals to many people to have a fraction of this something big. But definitely there are something like this in the works.
I think that's fantastic. I swear to God, guys, I wasn't setting Maddie up on that. I've always thought that was a great idea. And the biggest barrier to entry on things like art is just people don't feel like they have enough money. So
Mhm.
if you make it accessible to everybody, then you really, really have something that did not exist before. I don't think most people, 99.9% of the people out there in the world, didn't know about fractional fine art ownership. If they did, it would be a totally different ballgame. So to be able to start on that almost at the ground floor, that's
Mhm.
really a great idea. Because if people just think it's for the crypto rich, they're not going to be interested. But if people realize that it can, include them too,
Mhm.
that's a big deal.
Well, if you unlock the liquidity to appeal to many people and not just the handful of rich, then suddenly you get like a more valuable asset in terms of price. That's what we've seen at least. So these assets that were 20 Ethereum or 30 Ethereum, when they've been fractionalized, their valuation has gone up to like 50 to 60 just because more people can afford it, more people can own it and be part of that asset class. So
Absolutely. I mean, that's just math, you know?
mhm.
Yeah, that's math and basic sociology, and you have the chance to learn from all the industries that failed terribly at this in the past, and just hit the reset button and just start doing it right from the
Mhm.
start.
Yeah, the cool thing is, and especially with NFTs, is that yeah, on the front view of this, it's just a digital image, a video, maybe a 3D, whatever, however cool it looks like. Seemingly on the front end, it kind of just looks cool, but on the back end, because it's an NFT token, you can just do so much with it, right? And again, I want to bring up another company, and I have no investment in this. They came on my radar. They're called Smart Valor, I think. But basically, they're a Swiss exchange for cryptocurrencies, and they want to get into the NFT scene. And what they're doing to their customers is they're going to be having NFTs, so some art pieces that are worth a lot of money, and they're going to be breaking up, say, one NFT into 10 NFTs that you can own, and you can buy one of 10 of this piece. And even physical goods, they're going to be taking custody and releasing ownership of that as NFTs. So like 1 in 20 NFTs that represent an ownership, a shared ownership in this. And maybe eventually you can take that NFT, for example, if it's a Roger Federer Rolls Royce Rolex watch or something. It's like $80,000. Maybe you can own 1/10 of that as an NFT, and maybe you can take that NFT to a virtual world like Decentraland or any other one because it's a token, and have it recognized as that watch, and people can be like, "Hey, you own that Rolls, that Rolex watch, that 1/10 of that." So there's so much that can happen because it's an NFT token. Um, and again, like how you were talking about, people this generation get what this sort of a digital opportunity is. We had Justin Blau come in and do an art drop and sold, I think, 30 or 50 art pieces for zero point 0.3 Ethereum. And if you bought them, they were actually a digital ticket or an NFT to his virtual club in Decentraland. And I actually have one, and I have to show you this, Pat. When you go in there, it's just like such an amazing club. And it has the music that he has not released yet. So it's like kind of a ticket to a VIP room with his club with like early access to all of his stuff. And when I found out that it was a ticket, that made me want to have his art piece because it was more than just an art piece. It was just like so much more, right?
Exclusivity
Uh-huh.
is everything, especially, God, I mean, think of all of the Instagram influencers out there that kind of preach that lifestyle, that kind of high end lifestyle that everybody wants but just doesn't have. Um, and then you get them in on things like this, and it's something that's still affordable for most people. That's that's the next step. It's a really easy step. I'm an influencer myself. You just pay them and you make it something that's not going to ruin their reputation, and they're in for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, I think like just like on the on the very very top end, somebody like Kylie Jenner saying, "Hey, I just bought this digital Rolex, whatever the case, anything, this piece of art, this anything,"
Mm-hmm.
and you immediately have all these people interested, and then they can actually afford it, and then they put money into it, and the value goes up, and everybody sees the value go up, and then that whole trickle effect happens. I can tell you right now too, like just with the nightclub scene here in Vegas, it's dead because you can't have people in a room.
Mm-hmm.
Um, now that was a really exclusive thing for a lot of people. Everybody would take pictures, say, "Look, look how I got into this really high end club," and that was a status symbol for a lot of people. You can replicate that to a degree in a place like Decentraland and just do it there. I mean, there are just so many ways you can go. You just can't be afraid to hit up some of those really big mainstream influencers and float the idea out there and see what they say. The worst they can do is say no, and then you move on to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
But once I agree with you, once it's completely built out or almost built out, that's the next logical move, is to take a very small amount of money and offer it to somebody who has a really big audience and then go from there.
Yeah, I think we are kind of ready or getting ready for that sort of stuff. And Pat, again, I have to show you Justin Blau's club. I'm going to send you the NFT token, and we'll go into that club, that space. And it's just like it really gives you a glimpse as to how cool something like this can be and what NFT or like some sort of ticketing technology can do for this, whether it's Decentraland or any other project that does it. NFTs really have this sort of thing that one, that the token can be an art piece, it can be a ticket, it can even be a signal. For example, RAC, another Andre, another DJ in the scene, he came out with his RAC token, right? And he distributed that to all of his fans and his supporters, etc. And then he can kind of, if he has NFT tokens, he can distribute it to people that have bought his NFT tokens. So suddenly, like Justin Blau, whoever bought his pieces, he can say, all right, guys, thanks for doing that. Here's some free tickets. And he's just going to airdrop them, and you can claim his free tickets on his website. So there's all these things you can do now that you have this NFT tokens. And like you said, I think it works really well for influencers. And if you rewind it back a bit, then again, it matters so much more now that you grow your brand digitally and socially now as well, whether it be YouTube or Twitter.
Yeah, like I'm excited right now just to see this room, just because it's exclusive
I
and
have to
like
show you.
nobody else has access to it. You know, like it's not something I'd normally be excited about, but because of the exclusivity and the brand newness of it, you know, now I want in. You know, so I can only imagine how that's going to translate to the wider audience. And then, you know, you have some of these other, you know, smaller DJs doing, you know, how long before the Tiestos in the world, you know, come in and do the same thing once they see it work with somebody else.
Exactly.
So get in now.
Well, we had Beeple do his, 7-figure drop on the weekend, and then straight away on the next Monday or Tuesday, we had Deadmau5 announce that he's going to do something with Super Rare. We had Little Yachty come and do something with Nifty Gateway. These guys have 3 to 5 million people that follow them on Twitter, and they've got their own followings. But it's like the money's here now somewhere. It's for the experimenters and others to kind of jump in and do something. And money brings news, opportunity, and like a 7-figure drop, that starts to make sense for bigger DJs and people to do something with. And then they're obviously going to explore what else can be done, right? So yeah, it's kind of like this whole NFT Web3 opportunity now that's forming. And I think 2021, we're really going to see a lot more of this solidify and appeal to a lot of mainstream people, especially now with crypto doing its thing, companies wanting to have exposure to Bitcoin and blockchain and all that sort of stuff. And hopefully projects like Decentraland can kind of front run that and give them like this whole opportunity suite, where it makes sense.
Yeah, and that would be my whole pitch to investors too. First of all, having Deadmau5 and Little Yachty up there like that already, I mean, that is such a huge get. I was not aware of that. I thought it was almost more like mid-tier, you know, DJs and things like that. But those are two huge artists. Well, then you have proof of concept right there for the most part. But then really from a financial guy's standpoint, you have to ask yourself nowadays, what out there is cheap? Like cheap. You know, are stocks? No. Real estate? Absolutely not. Precious metals? Maybe in the grand scheme of things, but they've gone up a lot this year. Crypto? Same way. One of the only cheap things I could think of at the time was uranium mining stocks. And I make a video about that in November, and the very next week they shoot up. So those aren't cheap anymore. NFTs are just one of those very few spaces I see to where you can still get in, not at the absolute bottom, because you never want to get in at the absolute bottom because there's always that doubt in your mind. Maybe it could go even lower. I like things that have already hit the bottom and then gone up a little bit and are starting to make new higher highs and higher lows. That's usually, but still really, really cheap. And that's typically when I want in. And that's why I'm in this space right now.
Have you looked at anything outside of like virtual land and art? Has anything else? Have you bought any specific NFTs or looked at any industries that you want to get into?
I'm trying to buy land into Decentraland. It's just not working. It won't be long before I figure that out. I found a really good parcel of land that I like. It's kind of weird. Like I don't think in a virtual sense, it really matters how close you are to anything. But I could be wrong because, in Decentraland, you can just jump to wherever you want.
I have a theory. Oh, sorry.
No, but that being said, the land that I like is kind of close to a lot of things. So maybe I still have that stuck in my head. I don't know.
Yeah, man, I have to, this kind of hit me over the weekend, and I was like, because Decentraland and also crypto voxels, they're kind of browser-based worlds, you just have a URL, you can jump in, right? So I was thinking, maybe this is a disconnect from the platform needing to have the traffic stickiness, because it was kind of like Google search, right? Like you'd have people to go to the platform and they'd find what they wanted to search for, but they'd have to be on the platform. So like High Fidelity and Second Life, traditionally that's how it's worked. People had to download it and be in there, stay in there and kind of explore around and get around to stuff. But now with Twitter and social media and everything, I know, and I've noticed, like when I run conferences, although people kind of register on the events.decentraland page and kind of get pinged to get into the conference, how I get a lot more new people, and in fact, the bulk of the people, is to share snippets of videos with the link on my Twitter. And that's how I just suddenly get like 20, 30, sometimes 50 people when that happens, jumping into DCL and checking out, oh, what is this place? Oh, cool, it's a conference. I'm straight in here. So I'm thinking maybe with social media growth and this kind of like compounding signaling, when someone has a conference, everyone's sharing it. When someone has a game they just launched, everyone's sharing it. Maybe the traffic's supposed to come, or a big part of the traffic will come from this sort of new avenue, along with the stickiness. I mean, and both of them have a big thing to play here. But I was just blown away with realizing that every time we've had some sort of an event and people go crazy on social media for it, we just have so many new people jumping in and checking it out.
Well, that's exactly what you want. If all the cool stuff just happens on the websites, you can't really expect a whole lot to happen, except for people that are going to go find the stuff on their own, which most people just don't do. So yeah, social media is key. And then from there, you kind of go inward. Like, so the last art sale with people, where was that done? Was that done on a particular site, or
Yeah.
how would I have gone? So if it was, let's just say, okay, the next time he does that, that needs to be held in a Decentraland art gallery. And the
Mm-hmm.
only way you can see and buy his art is to actually physically be there,
Mm-hmm.
just like you would have for fine art, 50 years ago. That's how you start building out things like that. Always, oh my God, always use social media. Don't just expect people to show up. Tell them what's going on. That's how you get the new people in.
Mm-hmm.
But then take that outside in approach to where, hey, you can come, but you got to be here. You got a week to get set up.
Yeah.
Don't miss the event. And I think that's where that next level starts to turn. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, you have to utilize those channels because that's where everybody is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would have known much about this either if it wasn't for, really YouTube and Twitter. I'd have no idea. I'm not going to go to an NFT site if I don't know what it is, so it's, yeah, leverage what you have. Your social media channels are growing. I've seen it. Being a guest on Alex's show only helps.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how this whole thing builds out. I will probably come out with an NFT video myself in
Nice.
2021. Hopefully by then I will know a lot more about it and I'll have a lot more experience in the space. So that will help. And yeah, it's only going to grow and cluster from here. I don't see how it can't. I mean, can you?
Yeah, no, I agree with you, man. But I think just there's just so much messiness out there when you get into like, all right, what are NFTs? And I think a lot of people come to this industry thinking, all right, well, they can just look at a list of NFT projects and understand what they are. But NFTs are just, each NFT niche is kind of representing almost a whole entire new industry, which has its own user base, its own assets within that niche within a niche that are starting to make sense. So, for example, art NFTs. All right, you may have digital art, you may have music being sold as NFTs. Those may be tokens to get into virtual worlds. Like, there's so much depth of knowledge that you need to do. I think there needs to be almost like a kind of streamlined approach as to what to ignore and what to get into, almost, because they're just, like you said, there's scammers out there that are making projects and just kind of money grabbing, and then people ripping art and selling it on certain platforms. But yeah, I think certain industries that are really starting to take off, like art, gaming is probably going to be big, virtual land is going to be probably big. These ones that have been here for at least 2 to 3 years and have done nothing else but grow, I think it makes sense because historically they've grown in the last 2 3 years. They'll continue to do better. But yeah, I can only see it going up. I agree with you.
Yeah, and I don't think we're in too much danger of spreading ourselves out too thin. I think giving people choices and allowing for a different set of interests is always a good thing,
Mm-hmm.
because there might just be people out there that are only interested in card collectibles. That's just really all they care about. And you definitely want to service that market. Don't be afraid to, expand that market out. um, you're right. With the scammers and all that, we need like a version of VeChain for NFTs that can actually verify. And maybe that's coming down the line. I'm sure if there's money in it, somebody will do it. But yeah, well, you just got to be in this industry knowing that you're going to take some shots to the face,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to have to just absorb them and keep walking forward. And the reward is there, or is certainly potentially there. And the reward is really, really big. It's that asymmetrical upside I talk about. You're just going to have to deal with the growing pains. That's part of it. Unless you want to come in 5 years from now when everything's already super expensive, you can just wait for us to do it. But in the meantime, buckle up and get as educated as you can, and get everything set up so you can be an early adopter.
Mm-hmm. I think the making money part of thing isn't that important right now. Getting educated, like you said, and learning the opportunities and the indicators as to which might do really well, so that when this starts taking off, you can make educated decisions. I think that's probably most important in you.
I agree, because my approach is a little bit different than yours. You're very good into trading, buy low, sell high,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of keep upgrading your account that way. I'm more of a long-term buy and hold guy, be right and sit tight,
Mm-hmm.
find the things that really have great potential going forward, get them now, sit on them. If they make a bunch of money in the future, great. If they don't, by then you won't even miss the money because you already spent it 5 years ago. So that's kind of my approach. But the earlier you get into that game, you certainly want to. So that's why I'm really interested in what's going on right now. Plus, it's just fun. It's fun to see things on its early stages like this,
Mm-hmm.
and to see it grow from infancy. And I still think we're really, really in the infancy stage.
All right, Pat, I think we could talk for another hour, but we've crossed a good time here. We've talked for a good 45 minutes. Thank you so much for coming down, Pat. And I hope whoever's listening to this has learned a lot, or at least joined the conversation in their own way. Pat, thanks for coming down. Did you want to end with how people can find you? Any last words?
It's pretty easy to find me. Just look up No Nonsense Forex on YouTube. You can go to nononsenseforex.com for the website. That kind of directs you everywhere. But that's really it. I go by my real name's Patrick, but I go by VP over there, in case you're wondering why people are calling me that. But that's it. Yeah, I got so many crypto guys learning Forex now, because they understand the importance of diversifying into different markets.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great time to start. If you're an NFT person, if you're a crypto person, you are officially a finance person, and there's no excuse not to know other markets too. So use this time while you have it and get educated. So no matter what happens in the future, you always have a place to go, and a place to go to where you probably know more than what most people know. That's a huge, huge advantage. And I think this decade, that's really going to become more and more important. So get started now.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back with another episode maybe next week. I'll try and do these regularly. But yeah, ciao.